So, I know, you probably are wondering, what the hell is this guy talking about? How could there possibly be truths that are both true and false? And I get it, upon discovering inconsistencies, it could be an idea position or maybe hypothesis. A natural tendency to us humans is to simply dismiss them as, maybe something went wrong somewhere. Or we might tend to think inconsistencies are evidence that someone isn't being honest in their story. Or perhaps, like most philosophers, we might think that contradictions are impossible state of affairs. But what if I told you that some inconsistencies are truth conducive? As in, there are some facts that are truly inconsistent, and that there are at least some inconsistent statements that we should believe. Allow me just a moment of your time, and I promise you will be convinced at the end of this video. So, all of the previously listed reactions to inconsistency might be explained as being products of one of the most influential and successful logics in mankind. Classical logic. One of the axioms in classical logic is called the law of non contradiction, or L in C. For short, the axiom says that for any proposition, not open parenthesis, not P and P close parenthesis, where P is any arbitrary proposition. In others, no contradictions. From that, we get the following definition of a logical contradictions. A contradiction is a sentence A, such that both it and its negation are true. Dialetheism is the view that there are true contradictions. There are different types of true contradictions. Contradictions in language. These are contradictions only concerning truths and sets, and other abstract notions. These types of contradictions are not substantive. They are only founded a priori and exhaustive of our language. Second order properties. Contradictions in reality. These types of contradictions are not limited to language. They are founded a posteriori, in the empirical world, and they affect concrete objects. First order properties. In this video, I'm going to be explaining why both versions of dialetheism are true, starting with the stronger claim that there are contradictions in reality. So, for this, we're going to go over what I think is the strongest thought experiment in favor of dialetheism, one that even you can test. All we need is a mirror and a ball. I am going to show that it's possible for an object to be fully green and fully red. At the same time, this isn't limited to green and red, of course, it's just a paradigmatic example of what most philosophers think is a synthetic or a posteriori truth. And if successful, it would be a contradiction. Green is not red, and red is not green. So for both to be the case at the same time implies that we have a statement of the form A and not A. So what am I talking about? Well, it's simple. Get a double-sided thin mirror. Paint a ball half green and half red. Place the mirror in contact in between the intersection of both these colors and look at the ball from the edge of the mirror, with one eye looking from one side and the other looking from the other side of the mirror. After you're done, it should look roughly like this. You will see a ball that is red all over and green all over at the same time. If my experiment is correct, then a wholly red and wholly green ball should be possible. Now that we've established the experiment, let's go over some potential objections. 1. Each eye only perceives one half of the ball, or still only seeing a half red and half green ball. This would be true if you did not have the other eye that would be looking at the other half of the ball. Given that it is a unified experience, since both these eyes together give rise to one unified experience, you're just looking at the ball in its entirety, not one half each. Now, despite this, you are not going to see a ball that is half green and half red, but instead, due to the reflection, each eye will see a apparently fully round ball that is completely red or blue, depending on which side the eye is looking at the ball from. This will appear as a unified experience. Objection 2, this is an optical illusion, that it is not, quote unquote, actually what the color of the ball is. Well, let's go over what optical illusions are to begin with, especially concerning colors. When we talk about seeing an illusionary color, all we're really saying is that we have an instance of seeing an object as one color, when we would otherwise and predominantly see it as another color. All colors are reducible to perception. Colors aren't properties of objects, they are properties in relation to objects. So saying this color is an illusion can literally be reduced to just saying that this color is a special case of appearance. There is no ontological status for one and not the other. One isn't more correct than the other because all colors are perceptual to begin with. So you're not saying anything significant by saying a color is an illusion. Next, objection 3. This would only be subjectively true contradiction. This objection would not be informative. All truths are subjective. Only thing that can be true are propositions, and what makes a proposition true is that it's meaningful. And what makes it meaningful is that there is a subject to interpret it. This should be a no-brainer, but there are no such thing as objective truths. There might be objective truth makers, but not truths. Not that it matters. I don't see any important difference between a subjective and objective fact. It seems like proponents of the distinction might want to say that one is more real than the other. But what would that even mean? To say something is really more real than the other is to say nothing informative. It's the equivalent of saying, in reality, X is more real than Y. But in this case, you will be saying they are both real. unless you don't think one is really more real than the other. It seems like the only status an objective fact has in the context of argumentation is being unchanging to people's biases. But this thought experiment isn't dependent on biases. In short, a person who undergoes my thought experiment and reports, I am seeing green and I am not seeing green, will be making a true statement. Let's turn now to contradictions in languages. So, for the most part, most a priori contradictions in our languages, sets, or other abstracts stem from self referential or mutually referential statements. It's pretty generic. Probably one of the most popular examples of the aforementioned contradiction is the liar's paradox. Consider the following statement: this sentence is false. What a strange sentence. If it's false, then it is true, and if it's true, then it is false. So this seems like a classical example of what a contradiction is, right? It's both true and false. Well, as we will see, there are many attempts made by philosophers, and we will go through all of them and explain why they fail. A classical logician might he suggest that self-referential statements are allowed in the set of all propositions. But we might defend it by using a parity version. Consider this. The statement below is true. The statement above is false. The statements do not refer to themselves, only each other. But suppose you then say we aren't allowed to make statements concerning the truth value of any statements we make. But then I can just have someone write the below statement for me, as follows mark. The statement below is false. Andrew, the statement above is true. There's a version of the liar's paradox that can be argued to challenge any objection to it. It's called the liar's revenge. Essentially, we make a disjunction containing the statement, either this sentence is false or Q, where Q is any direct objection to the liar's paradox, may it be meaningless, ill-former, non-valued, etc. So for instance, either this sentence is false or it is non-meaningless. If it's true, then it's either false or meaningless. If it's false, then it's true, and if it's meaningless, then it's true. This is because if at least one disjunct of a disjunction is true, then the entire disjunction is true. And I briefly want to talk about Tarski's solution. I almost didn't want to address Tarski's solution because there's a sense in which we can say he conceded the liar's paradox. Tarski's solution doesn't really solve the problem. All it does is construct a different language. The problem is still there in the natural language. On the other hand, Tarski's solution gives rise to paradoxes of its own. Suppose we have Bob and Stacy. Bob states that everything said by Stacy is true. In Tarski's language, in order for this statement to be well-formed, Bob's statement would have to be stated from a higher language than all of Stacy's. But then let's suppose Stacy states that everything Bob says is true. In this case, in order for Stacy to make this statement, it needs to be stated from a higher language than all of Bob's. So we conclude that both Bob and Stacy would have a statement that is both in the meta-language and the lower language. And last but not least, I briefly want to object one motivation for LNC. The view that contradiction entails any and all truths, otherwise known as the principle of explosion. Consider the following argument. P1, either this statement is false or Q, where Q is any other arbitrary proposition. P2, this statement is not false. LNC or LEM. C, Q1 would be true by virtue of if we assume that it is false, then it would be true, and if it's true, then it's true. So a P1 can only be true. P2 is presumably true by virtue of LNC or LEM, hence the laws of logic also entail any and all truths. So it seems like principle of explosion is also a problem for LNC. I hope I persuaded you all. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe, and remember to not remember.